Hey guys, Cody here. Day 63, and I'm going to give you guys an update on my progress today. Okay, today is December 14th. Spent 6.5 hours on the Odin project today. If we look at the breakdown of the time, surprisingly, most of it went to coding. There was the typing at the beginning of the day. Coded a little bit more today. Got into the groove of things and was really getting some good coding out there. Now let's dive into what I did today. So I did a lot today. So we'll take a look at that. These fields are editable, so I can type in my name, my phone number, email address, website, and we can add this summary line. And what we see with those is that you can click the field and it will then become an input, which then you can enter in new data, and it will save that data to the state and then render it back to an HTML element. And so that's true with all these elements. Different than yesterday, we have these buttons that actually work now, and I have hidden the forms underneath the education and experience within those buttons, so the user doesn't just get those automatically populated. They have to add the educations and experiences that they had. So let's see what that looks like for education. We click it and we see that we have some text fields that pop up that instruct the user to add an institution, add a location, add a degree, and a start and end date. And those are all editable as we would expect. So they all work now, and there's no bugs that are associated with it. So had some bugs yesterday that was allowing you to edit multiple things at once. Now if you just keep clicking, then it'll focus out from the input and get it back to an HTML element. We actually also have the remove education buttons and the remove buttons working now too. So if I click this, it'll remove that education. If I keep clicking this, it'll add more institutions. So let me just add this back here. In addition to the education, so the add another experience is working too. So we have role, company, these start dates and end dates. And then we also have some good functionality around the add responsibility. So we can actually add responsibilities to the list, and we can take those responsibilities away from the list. And it works pretty well. It also automatically jumps to the new responsibility and puts the focus on that input so that the user can then just start writing the responsibility here. So I'll just write in a couple of responsibilities. And in addition to the add responsibilities, we can also, again, add more experiences, and those can have responsibilities put underneath them as well. But we will remove that experience, and that button works as well. Lastly, we have the remove editing buttons, and so this is to make it more of like in a resume. So we can click this button and it'll get rid of all of the kind of editing buttons that we have throughout the page. So if I click that, now it looks more like a traditional resume. So it's a pretty short resume because I'm just entering dummy data in here, but it has the look that I would like to have for my personal resume. So pretty satisfied with that. Now let's print that to see what that looks like. So I'm just saving it as a PDF for printing. And then let me bring that up so you guys can see that. And so that's what it looks like in a PDF format. So it comes out like I would also like it. One thing I am noticing is that this Cody Allen Stubbs is coming back as not an HTML, as a header 1 element, an H1 element. Well, I just found a bug, so it's actually giving it back as, oh, that's because, yeah, I think I see what's going on here. So I'm actually missing an address field here to enter the address. I think some last minute logic that I put in might have switched some things around. So I still see an h1 element being presented, so you can see that right there with h1.name. But then when I hover over the dev tools for Cody on stubs, it's showing that it's a class address. So there's something going on there that I'll have to look into. But I'm pretty satisfied with this overall for today. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys just to see, give you guys an update on what I accomplished today. Okay, let's jump over to VS Code. I want to review what I did today, and specifically the problem that I had yesterday was the list was pretty wonky for the responsibilities. So I had to figure out how to actually go about putting that into state and having it generate the appropriate HTML using React. So I figured out a way of doing it. The way that I talked about that I thought I would do it yesterday actually worked. So I had the edit mode for the editable text themselves happening on the outside of the actual like responsibility or the text that was being edited. But here I put the edit mode within the responsibility with an ID and a text property for each responsibility. And so within state, there's a responsibilities array that has objects put in them that have an edit mode, an ID, and a text property. Very similar to the editable text that I showed yesterday, there's some similar click events that are happening for clicking, for changing the text, and focusing out. And then there's these additional functions that we have here for adding and removing responsibilities. This up here is where the big difference is. So I'll just break this down real quick for you guys. So in order to utilize this state responsibilities array for generating this list, I need to be able to edit a specific object within the array that has a certain ID. So I'm giving unique IDs to each responsibility that is generated, and I need to use that ID upon an event to actually filter out or to actually get the responsibility, edit the responsibility, and then set the state again. So that's what we have going on here. If we go down to the actual on-click event, so this is for the HTML element down here. This is what we're concerned with. If we click on this element in HTML or on the page, it'll have this on-click event, and we see that this element has an RID, r.id, which corresponds to the responsibility that is being mapped from the responsibilities array. So we're having this generate these responsibility JSX for each responsibility within the responsibilities array. So it actually starts out as nothing because they have nothing in the responsibilities. Well, actually, I take that back. It does start with a placeholder responsibility, kind of like instruction, and it builds that out. But for each additional one, it then reloads this as responsibilities are added. But yeah, so we got to click on the responsibility to edit it, and then when we do that, we come up here and we take that click event and pass it to this on-click edit function. And the first thing that we do is actually get a kind of separate representation of the responsibilities array by doing this line 24 right here. So we set led items to this responsibilities array, and within that items array we're going to get the specific responsibility that is being edited. So we do that by using items.find, and we look for an ID of that item that has an item with an ID that is equivalent to the event target ID, which the event.target is the thing that we clicked on, and its ID is the ID that we're using to find this specific item. And then once we have that item, we set the edit mode to true, and that changes the HTML to the input and allows the user to edit it. And then we set the state to have responsibilities items. So that's just taking these edits and then putting them into the state. And then that's when we're able to actually edit it. And we actually have this similar pattern that's being done for each of the other events that we have for the user interactions. So again, it's happening here, but the only thing that we're changing here is we're actually changing the item text based off of the text value that the user has inputted, and then we're setting the state from there. And then on focusing out, the only thing that we're changing here is we're then deactivating the edit mode so that when React renders that specific responsibility, so it's going to see a state change, it's going to make the responsibilities map over each responsibility, and if that responsibilities edit mode is true, then it will run this, which it will not be true, so it'll go back down here and it'll render it as a list item. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys because that was a point that I was concerned about yesterday of how I was going to go about doing that. But using these responsibilities within the state, having that array and setting a specific ID and edit mode for each responsibility actually worked for having that dynamic list that it was also editable. And just quickly, I have the add another responsibility and remove responsibility. So these are fairly straightforward ways of doing this. Again, using this .state to change the responsibilities array. For add another responsibility, we're concatenating another responsibility on, setting the edit mode to true, and it's going to autofocus onto that HTML or that input to begin allowing the user to enter input. And then the ID is going to be unique, and it's going to give some dummy text here. For removing responsibility, if the user clicks that button, then it's going to go into the state and set the responsibility equal to the state, but filtered for responsibility IDs or responsibilities with an ID that are not equal to the target ID. So if we go down here, the remove responsibility button, which is what I showed you earlier, that button actually has an ID that's associated with that responsibility, and it has this specific click event that's on it. So once that's clicked, the React will get that ID, and then the JavaScript will filter out that specific responsibility and then put that into the state for the responsibilities array. So that's not all I did today. There is more that I added on here, but that was kind of the main stuff that I wanted to go over. I did have to make some tweaks and stuff to styling, and then I actually transferred over some of the learnings from making that editable list also to the editable text, and also rounded some things out, like if you were editing a text field, if you were editing a text area and you clicked enter, it would delete what you entered. So I added some event listeners, or added an event listener to prevent that from doing that, preventing the default behavior, and some other stuff like that, just like little things here and there. But yeah, just wanted to share with you guys that bigger aspect, and that's all I have for today, guys. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys tomorrow.